Coming up next on Wealth International News, calls for a Sharia trial for an American soldier. People in Afghanistan react to the U.S. soldier who will be tried in the United States. He's charged with killing 17 Afghan civilians. Also, the bust of a major child porn ring in Australia. Europe's new airline tax sparking an international trade war. The Pope visits Mexico, where and when Andy Warhols are up for auction. And the Hunger Games, more than just a movie. Wealth International News starts right now.
This is Wealth International News with Emmy Award-winning news anchor Graham Ledger.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for watching Wealth International News. I'm Graham Ledger. Topping our news, a tale of two countries with one common mass murder suspect. Army Staff Sergeant is accused of killing 17 Afghan civilians. He's officially being charged with the crimes, where he's being held at a military prison at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. Robert Bales is facing 17 counts of murder, which carries the death penalty. Meantime, in Afghanistan, the anti-American rage continues to fester from this latest incident. Michelle Cabrera reports many Afghans are demanding that Bales be tried under Sharia law.
Afghans in Kandahar are expecting no less than the death penalty for American soldier Robert Bales to answer for the killing of 17 civilians. The Army Staff Sergeant accused of killing Afghans in a shooting rampage in Kandahar last week will be charged with 17 counts of murder, a U.S. official said.
We demand from the court in the United States to give the death penalty to the U.S. soldier who massacred the civilians, because he deserves hanging because he committed the biggest crime. We want a punishment based on Islamic Sharia law.
The Taliban vowed to take revenge on NATO forces for the killings and said they had no faith in any court proceeding. A human rights activist in Kabul, Nadir Naderi, also called for a proportionate punishment.
It's very clear that the act was a clear violation of the Code of Conduct of U.S. military forces. It is a clear breach and violation of the international humanitarian laws, and therefore the punishment need to be proportionate to satisfy the victims of this horrible incident.
Nadiri said it would have been better if justice were pursued inside Afghanistan and that transparency was paramount.
We urge the U.S. government to release the finding of their investigation. It will give more confidence to the public on the proceedings of the trials.
The massacre in Kandahar, which followed the burning of Qurans at a NATO base, angered many Afghans and damaged relations at a critical time when Western forces are beginning to withdraw troops and the Taliban have suspended peace talks. Micaela Cabrera, Reuters.
To the Middle East, over to Syria. The battle between pro and anti-government forces is spreading. Syrian security forces clashing with gunmen in an upscale neighborhood of the capital of Damascus. But most of the violence, Deborah Luderbeck reports, remains in the flashpoint city of Homs.
Violence rages in Syria. Amateur video out of Homs, which could not be independently verified by Reuters, appears to show a burning tank. People can be heard cheering as the tank is engulfed in flames. The Free Syrian Army claims it set the fire. More footage shows citizens carrying a wounded man amid the sound of gunfire. The British-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights says 21 civilians were killed in Syria Wednesday. The majority of those killed died after the government shelled parts of homes. On Wednesday, the UN Security Council, including Russia and China, backed efforts by envoy Kofi Annan to end the bloody conflict. In a statement approved by all members, the Council threatened Syria with unspecified further steps if it failed to comply with Annan's peace plan, which calls for a ceasefire and demands swift access for aid agencies. The United Nations says more than 8,000 people have been killed in Syria since the uprising began a year ago. The Syrian government blames the violence on foreign-backed insurgent groups. Deborah Luderback, Reuters.
To Europe now. In France, it's soul-searching time for the French leadership. This after the killing of a self-proclaimed Islamic jihadist in the south of France. The terrorist killed school children at a Jewish academy earlier this week. Now, Deborah Luderbeck reports France's president is focusing on the current French culture.
At a campaign rally in Strasbourg, French President Nicolas Sarkozy says the recent shootings in Toulouse are the crimes of a, quote, monster and fanatic.
I would like to say that these crimes are not the crimes of a mad person. Because a mad person is irresponsible. These crimes are those of a monster and a fanatic.
He says France is not to blame.
No, France is not guilty. No, there isn't an environment in France that could explain these crimes, because these crimes are inexplicable and inexcusable.
The shootings of French soldiers, Jewish school children, and a rabbi by a homegrown Islamist gunman killed by police has upended France's presidential election campaign and resurrected conservative Sarkozy's prospects. Deborah Luderback, Reuters.
Over to Belgium, they are mourning another kind of tragedy, the loss of 22 young lives in a terrible bus crash that also killed 6 adults. Simon Hanna with a gathering in a small town to say goodbye.
Belgium's historic city of Leuven holds a church ceremony to honor the victims of last week's tragic bus crash. Thursday's joint funeral was held to remember the lives of 7 of the children who died in the accident, all of whom were aged 11 or 12 and attended the Catholic St. Lambertus school in a nearby town. Belgium's Prime Minister stood outside the church to welcome international politicians and Belgian monarchs who came to attend the ceremony. Thousands of residents gathered outside and in the central market square to watch the memorial on large screens.
I feel a lot of empathy. I just became a mother myself. So as a parent, I can really understand that this is incredibly difficult to conquer. There are no words for it. It really is very awful. I hope they will find the courage to get over it, and I hope I will never have to go through this.
A total of 22 children and 6 adults died when the bus they were riding in crashed into a tunnel in Switzerland on March 13th. The group were on their way back from a skiing trip when the accident happened. Simon Hanna, Reuters.
Down under in Australia, a major bust of a child pornography ring. Police arresting more than a dozen suspects in various locations while confiscating hundreds of thousands of images and videos. Michelle Cabrera reports some of the victims apparently include the very, very young.
Australian police have arrested 15 men suspected of participating in a child pornography network. The suspects are believed to have produced and shared material exploiting children using file-sharing networks. The federal police said they raided 19 locations and confiscated computers, mobile phones, and hard drives containing hundreds of thousands of children's images and videos.
The searchers have uncovered, and the AFP has seized, hundreds of thousands of images and videos depicting child sexual abuse, with some victims being still within their infant stage of life. And if they believe they can undertake this sort of activity undetected, then they need to think again.
The arrests come after a 4-month investigation sparked by a tip-off from Interpol last December. Police said that the porn network was originally discovered in Germany. The offences carry a maximum prison term of 15 years in Australia. Micaela Cabrera, Reuters.
In the United States, in Florida, a large rally in response to the killing of an unarmed teenager by a neighborhood watch captain. Thousands of people filled a park in Sanford, Florida. Michelle Cabrera reports the investigation now includes the FBI.
Around 8,000 people rallied in Sanford, Florida late Thursday, calling for justice in the death of 17-year-old Trayvon Martin. Trayvon was shot by a neighborhood watch volunteer in late February when he was walking back to a gated community in Sanford.
So you think he's yelling help?
Yes.
Though the shooting took place more than a month ago, the publication of 911 calls and testimonies have provoked anger over his death, with some saying he was racially profiled. Reverend Al Sharpton organized the rally on Thursday.
Trayvon could have been any one of our sons. Trayvon could have been any one of us. Trayvon represents a reckless disregard for our lives that we've seen too long. And we come to tell you tonight, enough is enough.
The volunteer, George Zimmerman, was armed with a handgun as he followed Martin, despite being told by police not to. Zimmerman claimed he acted in self-defense and has not been arrested. The teen's parents addressed the crowd.
I stand before you today not knowing how I'm walking right now because my heart hurts for my son. Trayvon is my son. Trayvon is your son. I just want to say thank you. Thank you for all your support.
Trayvon was a people's person. Yeah. He didn't deserve to die. Yeah. And I pledge I will not let my son die in vain. Yeah.
The Justice Department and the FBI have opened an investigation into the shooting, and a state grand jury is being convened to determine if there is enough evidence to file charges. Micaela Cabrera, Reuters.
Also in the U.S., price of a gallon of gasoline is causing many Americans to adjust their driving lifestyles. The national average for a gallon of gasoline now above the $3.85 mark. That is the highest level ever recorded for the month of March in U.S. history. Our web poll question: who do you blame for the inflated price for a gallon of gasoline? Please go to WealthTV.com and register your answer. You will see the web poll question on the right side of the home page. Out of Asia, India and China are pushing back against a new tax being levied by the European Union. The EU has come up with a new landing tax for airlines. As a result, Sierra Sutton reports a high-flying international trade war is about to get airborne.
A treaty confirming the air industry's commitment to battling climate change. But as aviation leaders signed the pact in Geneva, the threat of a global trade war edged closer. India has become the latest country to threaten a boycott of the EU's emissions trading scheme. It will ask local airlines not to buy carbon credits from or share emissions data with the bloc. China has already suspended purchase of $14 billion worth of planes from Airbus due to the dispute. Head of Public Affairs at Airbus, Reina Ola, says the EU measures are inappropriate.
This industry, the aviation industry, is already impacted by retaliation measures, and we believe it's time for the EU to consider this. Is EU ETS worth a trade conflict in one of the most important mode of transport? I don't believe this is not the case.
The scheme could levy charges of carbon emissions for flights in and out of Europe. China and India say the EU is breaking rules by charging for an entire flight and not just the part covering Europe. But Europe's High Court ruled in December that the law does not breach international agreements. The scheme has been widely criticised by the aviation industry. Paul Steele is an executive director at the Air Transport Action Group.
It's no longer a climate change issue. It's no longer a question of economics. This has become now a major political fight between different blocs. And, of course, at the end of the day, it's the industry that's caught somehow in the middle. So, of course, we want to see a solution to this as quickly as possible.
India's announcement will be a blow to Airbus. It has a 73% share of the commercial plane market in India. It says the solution now lies with the United Nations International Civil Aviation Organization. But EU officials say the organization has been talking about the issue for more than a decade without reaching an agreement. They say they'll only modify the law if a convincing alternative can be found. Kira Sutton, Reuters.
Over to Mexico, the excitement is palpable. Thousands of faithful are welcoming a visit from Pope Benedict XVI. Deborah Luderbeck looks at the final papal preparations.
awaiting the arrival of the Pope in Mexico. Final preparations are underway in the Mexican city of Leon, a day ahead of the much-anticipated visit of Pope Benedict. Local vendors are already offering their wares. Anticipation is in the air.
For us, it's a privilege for him to be here with us. I would ask him to keep praying for the good of people of the world.
Security is tight. Pilgrims are arriving to see the Pope. The visit will be the first for Pope Benedict in the largely conservative Catholic country. Deborah Luderbeck, Reuters.
Still to come on Wealth International News, the latest from the global financial markets. Also ahead, the contemporary art auction that could fetch more than $100 million. And a military coup in the West African nation of Mali. Checking the global financial markets for Friday, Wall Street is mixed. The Dow up a fraction of a percent so far. Investors are rattled by new home sales in the U.S. The February numbers are below forecast and down from January. In Europe, a down day. In London, the FTSE down 0.25%. In Asia, Japan's Nikkei down 1%. China's Shanghai Composite also down 1%. Meantime, oil at $107 a barrel, the dollar lower against the euro, and gold is at $16.61 an ounce. Now to the business of buying and selling modern contemporary art. In New York City, Sotheby's has a winner, a grouping of artwork that features names like Warhol and Lichtenstein. Tara Cleary reports total sales of this auction is going to be well over $100 million.
Sotheby's graced Los Angeles with some of the stars of the auction house's forthcoming contemporary art sale. Highlights include works by Roy Lichtenstein, Andy Warhol and Alexander Calder. Lichtenstein's Sleeping Girl is up for grabs and expected to fetch a hammer price of between 30 and 40 million US dollars. The pop artist is largely known for his comic strip-style paintings, often featuring women, says Sotheby's head of contemporary art, Tobias Meyer.
One always talks about the Lichtenstein girls, and that's why this painting is so important. It's also from the early 60s, which is his most important period of work, where he really broke out into the world with this pop language that made him so famous.
Another sale gem is a picture of Elvis Presley by Andy Warhol, entitled Double Elvis. Created from silkscreen ink and spray paint on canvas, the work is estimated to sell between 30 and 50 million US dollars. Meyer says Warhol's Elvis pieces are extremely rare at auction, as most are owned by museums or private collectors.
Elvis was a series of paintings that Andy created in 1962. He was obsessed with Elvis, and he was obsessed with stars. He painted Marilyn, he painted Liz, he painted Jackie. But Elvis was really the one I think he identified with.
Other featured artists include Joan Miró and Pablo Picasso. Sotheby's contemporary sale will be held in New York City on May 9th. Tara Cleary, Reuters.
Coming up next, trying to smuggle 1 ton of cocaine out of Peru as Wealth International News continues. To South America, out of Peru, a major drug bust with a European connection. Lily Grimes looks at the group's creative scheme to smuggle 1 ton of cocaine.
This Italian woman makes a lewd gesture of defiance as she's led past photographers by Peruvian police. She and 2 fellow Italians were arrested for allegedly smuggling cocaine. 3 British citizens are being held on similar charges. They are accused of using this sailing boat to transport 30 kilos of cocaine en route to the UK, packed inside fire extinguishers. The Peruvian authorities say that during March they seized 1 ton of drugs and captured 27 suspected smugglers. Lily Grimes, Reuters.
To West Africa, in the Republic of Mali, renegade soldiers have dissolved the government there. They stormed the presidential palace and ousted the president of that country. Deborah Luderbeck reports the United States is condemning that military coup.
Renegade soldiers in Mali take to the airwaves in Bamako declaring they have seized power. The statements made no reference to the whereabouts of President Amadou Toumani Touré, who for the past decade has presided over one of the more stable governments in West Africa and was due in any case to step down after elections scheduled for late next month. The U.S. condemned the action. State Department spokeswoman Victoria Nuland.
Well, first to say, as we said in our statement this morning, that the United States condemns the military seizure of power in Mali. We echo the statements of the African Union, of ECOWAS, and of other international partners in denouncing these actions. We've called for calm. We've called for restoration of the civilian government under constitutional rule without delay so that the elections can proceed as scheduled. And we stand with the illegitimately elected government of President Amadou Toumani Touré.
The overnight coup bid was led by low-ranking soldiers angry at the government's failure to stamp out a 2-month-old separatist rebellion in the north of the West African state. Deborah Luderback, Reuters.
Coming up next, the Hunger Games and its mega blockbuster potential as Wealth International News continues. Out of Hollywood, the buzz is all about a new film opening now called The Hunger Games. Industry watchers say it's not only going to be a big hit, topping $100 million this weekend, but Bobby Rebell reports it's also potentially the next mega movie franchise.
Happy Hunger Games? Ladies. Happy indeed for Lionsgate, the studio behind the movie that broke box office records before it even opened. Fandango says Hunger Games is the top-selling franchise opener of all time. Nearly 2,000 showings sold out days before its box office debut. The Hollywood Reporter's George Salai went to an early screening.
Audiences left and were pretty excited, especially the younger audiences liked it, but even older audiences, my age and older, seem to enjoy it. So, the hope for the marketers of the movie has been that it really hits all 4 quadrants of movie audiences, meaning male, female, younger, and older. And that's usually what you want to go for.
The film has a built-in target audience. More than 24 million copies of The Hunger Games are in print. And as far as a year in advance, marketers were using traditional and new media to make sure they hit their mark. The books have more than 3 million likes on Facebook and more than 300,000 followers on Twitter. Professor Sam Craig is the director of the Entertainment, Media, and Technology program at New York University.
So you've got the trailers on the web, you've got games for the iPhone, you've got Twitter, you've got Facebook. They did one clever thing. They had a contest. They invite some fans to the set. They get them involved, and so these kids are really honored to be there, and they want to tell everyone else.
And the buzz is heating up. Hours before the movie debuts, Hunger Games is one of the day's top 10 searches, according to Google Trends.
The latest analyst figures I've seen say that it could be about $350 million in U.S. box office alone. And since that's usually less than 50% of global box office these days for films, that means we could pretty much get into 700 million or in that range of global box office, maybe even more.
Numbers that could lock in the Hunger Games as the next big Hollywood franchise. Bobby Rebell, Reuters.
We shall see. Thank you for watching Wealth International News. We will be back at 5 Eastern with the latest news from around the world. Until then, I'm Graham Ledger. Good day.